Welcome everybody. What is going on? My name is Andres Martinez. This is my wife Luz Martinez, and welcome to the Wealthy Supernatural Lives. Code number 9, becoming aware of the field. Let me know if you're watching live. Give me a hashtag live. If you're watching the replay, give me a hashtag replay below. All right, we're gonna get into this. It's gonna be such a powerful session. And my wife is here with the blindfold because as I'm setting the frame, as I'm doing this teaching, she is amplifying it with her feminine. She's amplifying it, multiplying it. It's very, very powerful. And for those who know about frequency and vibration and can perceive and read, you'll be able to know that every single time that she is here, she is embodying these codes and she is holding the tone without holding. All right, so welcome to this class. It's going to be really, really exciting because it's the beginning of superpowers, the beginning of playing with the matrix and bending matter and bending reality. So if you've been wanting to know more about creation, if you already took the 13 subtle bodies masterclass that I gave, if you already understand more about the high masculine, the high feminine, and the void, and you are integrating like the wealth tone and some of the other stuff that we've talked about, then this is going to make so much more sense. So I recommend you watch and you check out some of the other trainings. There's already been 8 codes that I've given. This is number 9, becoming aware of the field, my friends. So let's step out for a minute of our 3D reality and understand that even science has already proven that every single thing, right, like this ring, for example, carries an electromagnetic field. Okay, every single thing, whether it's nature, whether our colors, textures, all of what you see carries a specific vibration and energy, a specific electromagnetic field. Okay, you carry an electromagnetic field. We talked about that in the 13 subtle bodies code, number 7, I believe. And the reason why we carry this is because there's so many other dimensions and subtleties that we do not perceive with our physical eyes or with our physical senses. But we do have these senses. The problem, people are too dense, okay? And most of us are too dense, unless you've been like working on this and meditating since you were maybe a child. And even then, it's like you've been told the way that things work, like with the Newtonian principles and with, you know, just seeing the mass as what it is, and you don't understand maybe the subtleties around it. So let's imagine for a minute that every single thing that you're seeing carries a nice sphere around it, and that field carries the information, carries the frequency, carries the code that is actually making it possible. Okay, so let's take this for a minute as an example. The field around it, okay, is actually what is telling it to be this shape, to be this color, to be this specific texture, all of it, even the space in 3D, which is a very interesting thing when we're going to start talking about telekinesis, because in reality, nothing is absolutely fixed. If you change the subject code, the structural code of the spherical wave that is affecting the field of any object, then that object will change its properties. Okay, it's no secret that Jesus transformed water into wine. He gave new properties to the water and changed the structural code of it. Okay, Jesus had the keys to change the subject structure code of their electromagnetic field. That's why when Satan tempted him and said to turn the stones into bread, this was an actual literal temptation, because Jesus could have grabbed the stones and turned them into bread and have dinner there. Okay, this is very important to understand, because nothing is fixed. Nothing is how you've been told it is. And everything is made of the same atoms and the same like dots in the hologram. If you change the hologram, if you change the image and the command, just like a program would, right? You might have a computer, a certain hardware, but you change the program, the hardware will behave differently. Is this making sense? Let me know below. We're gonna start getting a little bit more advanced, but in reality, even code number 1 is extremely advanced, because when you think you know something, you gotta understand that you gotta become a fool, like the Bible says, so you get to know something. Because if you think you know something, you don't know it yet how you ought to know it. Does that make sense? You gotta understand that sometimes we see certain principles like money, like faith, like the void or stillness, and we think we know what it means, but we actually are barely tapping into that egregor. And we're gonna talk more about egregors in upcoming class, and how the field is actually, composed, and how we move with our thoughts to different fields of information, and how really our subtle bodies, and specifically our spirit, is like an antenna. And this antenna is tuning into a very specific frequency, a very specific consciousness level. If you can imagine you're tapping right now into this specific frequency that I'm putting, and now you're able to download the corresponding thoughts, the corresponding emotions, the corresponding perceptions, the corresponding images. That's how it works. That's why when I see a person and I read the field, I'm able to see something very interesting. I'm able to see what level of consciousness they're in. For the most part, it's complex, but when the Holy Spirit gives specific word of wisdom or word of knowledge and discerning of spirits, and I can see the spirit that they're carrying, then I can see as well and essentially prophesy how that field is going to behave, how that person in that state, in that frequency, is going to be carrying a specific set of thoughts, a specific set of emotions. Like when I see somebody in a state of fear, I know that they're going to be fearful about new things, for example, because I know they're vibrating in that frequency. If I see somebody vibrating in a frequency of pride, for example, I know that God's going to resist them, and a lot of things in their life is going to be, just chaotic, and they're going to be experiencing these emotions and behave a certain way. So every single thing, whether we're talking about this, whether we're talking about this, my ring, myself, the eye mask, this, all of it has a very specific electromagnetic field. And so when you understand code number 1, which is the void, and you're able to slow down your brain waves, we'll talk more about that too. Slow down your brain waves from beta brain waves, which is what basically anybody in waking life is, on. And then there's alpha brain waves, where now your neurons and the vibration, the oscillation that your neurons are making actually slows down. And you go from vibrating at like 25, 28 hertz to vibrating at like 15 or 12. And so for most people, when they are down in this alpha frequency, they fall asleep. That's why a lot of people, they go through my meditations and they're like, I fell asleep. They're not able to remain conscious as they slow down their brain waves so that they can open to more information. And literally, you will feel how time slows down. By the way, if you're not yet part of my supernatural community, make sure you comment supernatural. For less than a cup of coffee, you can enter, and there's the 100K meditation there that I just gave yesterday. There's also the Fate Code meditation, and all of these things will help you start to tap into this spiritual technology for literally almost free. Okay, I decided to finally do this with my wife because we're raising a whole generation, a whole set of warriors and warrioresses that understand the higher laws of creation, that understand how reality is made and how they can operate in gifts, in the supernatural, how they can operate in the prophetic, in dreams, in visions. And of course, I love to have every single one of you inside the initiation, which is 350,000. And it's one-on-one, and we can go deep inside that, with even 1 year more of integration, because I want to take you through the 12 rites of passage. Imagine this, but like all of it, like the full meal deal, not just some appetizers, See if you can imagine that analogy. And I love that, because then we can really go deep, and I can train you and give you everything I know, but it requires a big, insane commitment. Most people are not ready for that commitment. That's why it's also a big energy exchange. And we talked about the wealth tone and about how energy exchange works so that you can receive these codes. So if you want to be part of the initiation, you can comment initiation below and I'll personally reach out. And if you're not ready for that, but you do want to increase your finances, increase your income, I have a very powerful program with the 100K frequency, helping you embody this frequency, plus the 13 supernatural codes, which are like full classes of this. You know, I've taken pieces of it, but I'm gonna give you full classes of it, 13 of these classes, so that you can actually know how to increase your income and make $100,000 in one single day and be able to take the rest of the month off to work on your gifts, to travel, to spend time with your family, whatever it might be. I love to empower people to do that, and we're gonna go very, very intense. You know, for 30, 60 days, I'm gonna show you how to craft, how to package your genius, and how to launch it and attract and close, you know, six-figure or multiple six-figure clients if you have the level of faith needed, the level of commitment needed, the level of embodiment needed. And I'll show you how to do that, how without the complications, without the funnels, without the ads, without the, you know, all this crazy stuff that the world tells you, all this crazy strategy, but just by embodying a certain frequency, because what you're doing is you're implanting with your whole being, with your 13 subtle bodies, an image into the field. And so you're literally creating a whole new space and receiving a whole new timeline that automatically unlocks that, and it can literally just chase you and find you, like I was sharing. And a lot of the case studies I gave about clients going from 8,000 to 240,000, you know what I mean, with like just embodying this frequency, not working harder, not like starting to run some crazy complicated funnels and ads, not, you know, doing some crazy secret webinar, but by actually embodying and moving, migrating to that timeline where you already have that. Because in reality, there's never a lack of resources. Only it's in your mind. Only it's in your lack mindset, in the lack tone. Okay, so make sure that if you want to jump into that 100K frequency, you comment 100K. It's $10,000 paid in full, and we're gonna have a ton of fun. I'm gonna show you how to actually be able to embody this frequency so you can command six-figure quantities without lifting a single finger. Okay, but let's go back to the field. Come with me to understand some of the basic stuff here. Code number one, becoming aware of the field. We're gonna first talk about colors, okay? Every single one of the colors that you see in the spectrum, and even the ones you can't see, holds a very specific vibration. This has already been measured by science. This has been measured by, you know, just general education out there, because every single color holds a very specific information. So for example, the color red will have a more heat feeling when you are able to read it with your hand and with your field. The color blue will naturally be more magnetic, and we talked about this principle. You know, it's going to be a little bit colder. Green, it's usually neutral. Interesting stuff. RGB, right? Like we can talk a lot about colors and about like primary colors, but you know, when you understand how to read the colors, and I literally put some of the like high-level clients, they go into specific exercises where I tell them how to feel the field of certain colors, literally by having like, you know, different shapes that have colors on it, and they blindfold themselves and they go through a very specific exercise and system so that they can learn how to receive that information with their field, with your hand. As a rule of thumb, by the way, the man reads with the left hand. Why is that? Because our left side is, for men, is feminine. Our right side for men is masculine. For women, it's different. For women, they read with their right hand because that's her feminine side. And the left is the masculine. So when you're trying to, you know, read a very specific vibration, whether it be of colors, whether it be of shapes, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, you gotta understand that you gotta use, just to aid yourself. Of course, at the beginning, it's gonna be harder for you, but as you do it, yeah, you can then use the other hand or your field. You don't even need the hands. You can just put your attention body on that specific thing or place or whatever you're reading and receive that information, because where your attention goes, energy flows. And once we establish a very specific link, we can exchange information, okay? I was telling you the other time about neutrinos and how, these are like the data stream from what they call the dark matter and the more subtle vibration that is actually being perceived by us through our energy body, okay? I believe science has only gotten to understand like 2 or 3 of the 13 subtle bodies, and they're never gonna get there because only God can tell you the deep things of God and the deep things of the Spirit. That's why we need the Holy Spirit, because He is the Spirit of truth and of revelation, okay? Now, let's go into shapes. Each shape will also have a very specific vibration. And as a rule of thumb, the more sides it has, the more it will vibrate, or you will feel the vibration more intense because there's more information, okay? The circle will vibrate a lot different than the square, and you will be able to see it. Even as I'm doing this, I can perceive it, and I can even feel like the little corners of it. And I've done these exercises a lot of times. I probably need to even go back to it and do it even more, because it's so subtle. And there's so much that we can learn to read the field. Not just when you are walking into a specific place and you're like, oh, I feel something. Or when you meet somebody, you're like, oh, I feel something. No, this is like super basic level, and people think that they're like, oh, super empath and super whatever, just because they can feel these like mini subtleties. No, I'm telling you, there's people out there. I can't do this yet, but I know I will. I just haven't really trained on that right now. But you can learn to read a book with your eyes closed. And I've seen even young kids doing this. They can read a book without their eyes, physically, like completely blindfolded like this, and they can just read it, like they can just see the words very clearly. It's the same principle of remote viewing. And so, welcome to the mysteries. So you can literally draw different colors, draw different shapes in different pieces of paper, and like, if you want to make this a practice, right? If you want to actually implement what I'm telling you, not just be like, oh, this sounds really cool, Andres, like, thanks. Like, no. If you want to actually apply this, you can literally draw some of these shapes and blindfold yourself and try to feel the difference. Shuffle them, try to feel the difference, and you will see how they do carry a different information. And over time, you'll be able to open in your feminine. Okay, this is a feminine energy aspect of it. That's why it's harder for a lot of men. Seems like there's a lot of women that I've trained that it's easier for them to feel the field, because men are usually more in their masculine. They don't know how to move to their feminine energy and how to like open. I definitely learning every single day from my wife's feminine energy, and how I can become more sensitive, more subtle, right? Without obviously compromising the masculine energy, and knowing how to switch between the two depending on what is needed. But if you're trying to read the field, if you're trying to open to the high masculine command, like we saw, like Christ giving you a specific command, like even for a man, you gotta be in your feminine. You gotta be ready to be a good submissive, to be a good servant of Christ, so that then you can receive that specific command. And that goes with your feminine energy, okay? This is very, very important, because when you're gonna try to, read colors or read shapes, you gotta be able to do it with your left hand, which is the feminine principle, and opening your feminine energy, okay? There's a lot of people that don't even know what the difference is. They can't even perceive it. I tell them start with fire, okay, literally a candle, and with an ice cube. And you gotta feel and recreate and visualize this until now you connect your image and your imagination. Now you make it into visualization by opening your perception and feeling. Not imagining it, not fantasy, feeling it fully, and be able to understand the properties and the attributes of fire, of water, because the man is like the fire and the woman is like the water. The man is electric, the woman is magnetic. The man's head is magnetic, his genitals are electric. For the woman is the complete opposite. That's how it works. Okay? So if you want to actually implement this, I recommend you carve 20, 30 minutes out of your day. You sit in meditation. You first enter the void. If you don't know how to do that, go back to code 1 and jump inside the community so you can actually get some of the more advanced meditations, by the way. And comment supernatural if you want that. And get access to the void meditation and some of these resources, even starting with the faith code meditation. Okay, it's literally almost free. It's the easiest yes ever if you actually ready and committed and wanting to understand this stuff. Okay, so you would go into the void, and then you would go into that feminine energy and understand that magnetism and that property of water, and even breathing the element of water, and then opening your perceptions, not just at the physical level, not just at the energetical level. You open your perceptions at the spiritual level, and then that governs everything else. Okay, we talked about that in the 13 subtle bodies. So imagine that you're gonna be feeling these shapes, and you might want to draw them, or you might actually have different markers, and you can feel the difference between them. Okay, same thing with numbers. And you can do this with a dice, for example. Literally, like, just shuffling it in your hand and just feeling these numbers. Okay, these are very boring exercises for a lot of people. They're like, oh, I can't feel anything, they stop doing it. Again, this is not for most people, and most people don't have the patience or the commitment or the resources or the energy required for it. That's why I teach only the 1% of the 1%. I wake them up to the supernatural gospel. Okay, so it's the same thing with numbers. They carry a very specific frequency and vibration. They carry a very specific essence of it. Okay, with numbers is very interesting because you can actually feel like the weight that it carries, and a higher number will definitely be giving you a very different frequency than a small number. It's not just the shapes of the number as you draw them. There's specific vibration of numbers. And as a matter of fact, when you're working with the prophetic, one of the exercises is to visualize numbers, visualize letters, names, so that then the Holy Spirit can use that skill to give you very specific things about a person. You can then start to see like a birthday of somebody, or a specific number that's important for somebody, or a specific name because you've been visualizing the letters like A, B, C. But I'm saying visualizing them where you can see them in front of you, like it's right there, I'm not talking about just like, oh, you sort of see it in your imagination. This is what most people think I'm talking about when I talk about visualization. I'm talking about you're seeing them like plastically, like it's there, you know what I mean? It's very hard to get to this level. Even just visualization alone probably takes months of practice for somebody to start seeing a very clear red or a very clear blue. Not just a, thing in the back of your mind with a bunch of darkness, but seeing it like so clearly. Okay, we'll talk definitely more about true visualization, how to actually visualize so that it can impact the field. Otherwise, it's just your imagination. This is why for some people it works to visualize like their vision or what they want and stuff like this when people use visualization. And for other ones, they don't, because they have not developed more clear and plastic imagination. But it's not even imagination, because you start crossing the veil and the realm between the 3D and the 4D, and then you move into like 5D and awareness of your consciousness body and the perception of your image, which actually comes with the fire element at the level of your consciousness body, which is the 12th body. Okay, very, very important stuff. Same thing with perception. You gotta activate it, like I said, not just at the physical level, at the emotional level. These are like basic stuff. You have to open it at the spiritual level. That's why I would say our school is the #1 school of spiritual, like spirit development, like a spirit gym. There's people out there teaching more stuff about the mind, energy, emotion. We're teaching like the highest mysteries of Christ with the spirit, and developing your spirit, understanding that the highest law will govern all the other ones. The lower laws will have to submit to the higher law. Okay? Now, what about people and places? Well, of course, we start getting more complex once we can understand certain things, and we can see a person, we can rest our attention body and be able to feel a certain frequency. You can also activate your spiritual vision and be able to see even the emanation of somebody, and even be able to see the colors, and the colors that are like muted, for example, a little darkened, or the ones that are very bright, that will also correspond with the 7 chakras like we talked about, which correspond to the organs. I can see sometimes, when the Spirit gives me revelation, when I'm not dense, when I'm sharp, I can see somebody, and I can know even exactly where it hurts or where they have a problem, even in their physical body, because I can see the emanation, I can see the field, I can see where the dark spots are. Okay, this is like a next level, and not just energetically, right? Because that what I just told you is energetically, but you can actually do it at the emotional level. You can slow down your brainwaves enough and actually hear the thoughts too, telepathy, tap into telepathy. And then at the spiritual level, you can see what spirit they're in. Because sometimes a very advanced person might be able to conceal their emotions, conceal their energy, and do a certain mimicking of it. But you can never mimic the spirit. And those who actually have the gift of discerning of spirits, well, good news. If you develop this correctly, no one can ever lie to you. You'll be able to see what spirit they have. But it takes a long time, my friend. Even for myself, I'm still developing it. And there's times that I am still learning certain things at any of the levels, because it's a whole multiverse of stuff that I'm giving you. That's why it's just intro. That's why it's called the initiation, because you're initiated, but then there's so much more, you know what I mean? So anyways, guys, we'd love to have you inside my community, the supernatural community, so you can understand more about this and be with a field of people that are interested in dreams, in visions, in activating their gifts, the supernatural, in making millions, having a big vision. Even just surrounding yourself with the right people will make a huge impact in your life. Okay, this is very, very key. And so, of course, same thing with places. There have been times where God has shown me certain places, like when I went to the Vatican. And I even made a video. You can check it out on my profile. And I said, very clearly how I was seeing demons everywhere. This place is very charged, a lot of demonic activity. And I was seeing literally certain demons coming or flying around or in the corner, and I could feel the field of the Vatican. But not just the field, but seeing at the spiritual level, at the astral level, and be able to navigate and be oh wow, this place is super demonic. And there's a reason why the Great Babylon and all of this, with the Catholic Church. But let's not talk about religion, let's not talk about religiosity, but more about the fact that certain places might carry a very high vibe. And I talked about this in the video. Again, you can scroll down my timeline, but I said that some of these ones were very beautiful in architecture, which gave a very high vibe energetically, but it was under a spirit of religion, lies, and deception, which actually lower another aspect of it. And the overall was obviously demonic. But for some people, they might feel there at 400 hertz frequency and be oh, I feel so good, I feel inspired, this, that. But it's because they're only feeling at the energetic level, which is impacting how they feel, but they're not feeling at the spiritual level. They're feeling at the emotional body level. And so they might be wow, this is a beautiful place. I feel God's presence here. And it's no. You gotta ascend and open your spiritual vision so you can see the truth. That's why Jesus said, if your eye be single, your whole body will be full of light. If not, your body will be full of darkness, my friends, because it is the eye of the body, the lamp of the body, okay? And so there's very interesting dynamics that can happen with places that you can see sometimes on the physical, a very beautiful building, and obviously it carries a certain energetic frequency of order, of being polished, or gold even, silver, marble. But behind that, behind just the energetic or the quantum that a person might be perceiving, there might be some crazy spirits manipulating this. That's why the Bible says that Satan dresses himself as an angel of light. Doesn't gonna come whoa, this is so evil, just dresses as an angel of light and is deceiving many people. Even though seeing the Pleiades and the Lyrans and the Arcturians and all of this stuff, and they feel they're this very advanced, evolved beings. There's actually people even channeling these beings and feeling oh yeah, they got their whole council and squad and galactic crew and all of this kind of stuff because it feels good to them. But in reality, these are demons dressed in light. They don't know how to discern in spirit. You might be asking, how do we know when we come into beings? To discern. Because we talked about how the spirit of Python, for example, will even sometimes simulate the voice of God. How do we know when it's a an actual good being. And sometimes we don't freaking know. Well, you test the spirits according to 1 John 4. You don't just feel whatever you feel, because you might be able to feel very nice feelings that make it feel like love, like make it feel like peace, like make it feel like joy, but they're not. And you don't know how to discern at that level. And you never even ask that being, do you confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh? And it says very clearly, 1 John 4, that every spirit that does not confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is of the spirit of the Antichrist. So you got to understand that you got to test the spirits when it comes to beings, because sometimes you might think that, it's a demon and it's actually an angel. And you're just seeing like an angel of war, and you just got like super intimidated, or you're being rebuked about something, or, like certain, conviction is coming to your life. Other times you might think it's an angel of light, but it's actually a demon that is just trying to deceive you, like, keep being with that person, which is so bad for you, or like a bad relationship, like unequally yoked. That's okay. You can stay there, everything is good. Or you can keep, entertaining this bad habit, or, doing this bad thing over here, this sin. It's okay, and it might feed it. And you don't know that you actually have an altar. You don't know how to test the spirits. So understand that right now we're talking about becoming aware of the field. And when we talked about that, we're talking about the astral realm. We're talking about the energetic component of it and the field of it, and how it works and operates in 4D. But this is not the end all be all. If you don't know how to actually test the spirits and how to use the gift of discerning of spirits, because you don't even have the Holy Spirit, then of course this is going to also be part of what Satan will use to deceive you. That's why you got to be very, very diligent with these things and be watchful. And we talked about spiritual warfare and how to put on the full armor of God. Okay, so I hope this is making sense. I hope you can actually implement to do the shapes, to do the colors, to sit and try to slow down your brain waves and feel the difference between a circle and a triangle. Feel the difference between the 7 and the 13. Feel the difference between the red and the blue. Feel the difference between fire and water, and be able to recreate that sensation so that you can integrate that and embody that. And of course, this is like always present, these rules between a husband and a wife, between a man and a woman, because we carry different essence. And even though we both have both energies, the man incarnates the masculine, the high masculine, and the woman incarnates the high feminine. But this is also something that you need to learn how to perceive, so that you can start to play with these fields. Because here's the thing. It's hard for me to teach you how to bend reality, how to manifest, $1 million in a month, or how to levitate off the ground, or how to, move in dream space, or how to do certain things in the physical, how to attract your soulmate, or have the relationship of your dreams, if you don't know yet even how to enter the void. Or you know how to enter the void, but you don't know how to feel the field. If I put you with these shapes in front of you, you won't be able to recognize it. If I put you, different shapes and with different colors, you won't be able to feel the difference. And so, of course, there's so much more to develop, and as an extension of the gift of discerning of spirits. So before we can work with the field, before we can move an image charged with the substance of faith to affect the field and to change the structural code of the electromagnetic field, you need to be able to feel the field. Does that make sense? So we're going to be building upon these different teachings, as we go. But again, make sure you comment supernatural if you want to be part of this community, new community that we just launched. Make sure you comment 100K if you want to be part of my $10,000 program, so I can teach you how to create, launch, attract 6-figure clients by just embodying this frequency, plus get access to the 13 supernatural codes so that you can actually upgrade all of your life, not just your finances. And lastly, comment initiation if you want to be part of my 1-year program, one-on-one access to me, and get literally all of it, like the full meal deal. I can teach you from A to Z everything, and it's $350,000. Okay, let me know below. Let me know if you have any questions as well, and I will see you on the next one. Take care, my friends.